UFC Seattle betting show. We have 11 fights scheduled for this weekend. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to kick things off with Modestas Bukauskas, a minus 305 favorite. The comeback on Rafael Cerqueira is plus 245. And this is one where I have to go back to the well with the underdog here. I bet him by submission in his UFC debut, and obviously that did not turn out ideally when the first punch that was landed by Aslan, who's also fighting on this card, basically had Cerqueira cross-eyed. He covered up, didn't do anything, and got finished. So obviously it was a bad look for him in his UFC debut, but that was against a really powerful guy who basically hit his win condition. I think this is going to be a much better look for Cerqueira. For starters, Bukauskas doesn't really have a ton of finishing upside. Yes, he's got, multiple wins by knockout. Most of that came against the lower level guys on the regional scene. At the UFC level, he's kind of harmless. He likes to stay on the outside, pump his jab, mix in some leg kicks. He's not really looking to finish guys and bite down on his mouthpiece and go to war because he has durability issues of his own. He's been knocked out multiple times. He obviously had the nasty leg injury as well. So this is somebody that I just have a lot of concerns when he's propped up as such a big betting favorite here. And I just think it's a classic buy low spot on Cerqueira, somebody that hasn't been able to show what he's capable of. I do think Cerqueira has some powerful body kicks on the feet. I also think he's going to have a clear advantage in the submission grappling realm if he can get the fight to the mat. So this is an easy bet for me. I like the underdog here. We'll say it's Cerqueira by submission. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Nursultan Ruziboev, a minus 290 favorite. The comeback on UFC newcomer McConico is plus 235. And you guys know what to expect from Ruziboev. This guy is a very explosive finisher early in his fights. 32 of his 34 career wins have come inside the distance. He's got power on the feet. He's got a kind of a slick submission game as well, although his defensive grappling is not very good, as we've already seen. At times, he can be taken down. He can be controlled as well. And he's facing somebody in McConico who's 34 years old. He's a 9-2 regional fighter, has mostly fought some lower level guys, but he seems to have an okay skill set. He also has a dominant finish win over Maki Patola where he knocked him out. He fights out of the southpaw stance and trains at MMA Lab, and he does have some power on the feet. He also has a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's capable of mixing in those takedowns. So this is one where I think it's certainly live that Ruziboev hits his win condition, which I think is an early finish here, and that is going to be, my official prediction for this fight. But I do think that the newcomer is live here in the sense that he has enough power to hurt Ruziboev, and he can also go to that wrestling, which we know is a clear leak in the game of Ruziboev here. So this is one where I do think the underdog is live here. But for the official pick, I'm going to say it's Ruziboev by TKO. And next fight up, we have Nikolai Veretnikov, a minus 150 favorite. The comeback on Austin Vanderford is plus 130. And yes, for those that recognize the name, that is Mr. Van Zant. He is making his UFC debut on short notice here, facing Nikolai Veretnikov, who made his debut against Danny Barlow. He also previously fought on the Contender Series against Michael Morales a couple years ago. And to be honest with you, I was underwhelmed by that performance against Morales. Obviously, Morales is a pretty solid prospect, but I just didn't think that he kind of lived up to what I had seen prior coming into that fight. Now, since he lost that Contender Series fight, he goes back to the regional scene and beats three absolute nobodies, bottom of the barrel guys, and then he makes his short notice UFC debut against Danny Barlow, where nothing really happens. And that's my concern with Veretnikov, especially now that he's priced as the favorite, is that he's very low volume. Yes, he's pretty well-rounded, but he's very low volume. He doesn't have a ton of finishing power. Sure, he's got like a little bit of pop in his punches, but he's not like a one-hitter quitter, not really a huge knockout threat, and he's not going to look to grapple either. So this is somebody that I just think is a thin margins type of fighter, and then you're facing someone in Austin Vanderford who is a very solid fighter in his own right. Like, this guy's been all over. You've seen him in multiple promotions. His only 2 losses are to Aaron Jeffrey and Gregory Musasi, who are very respectable guys in other promotions. He's got a very well-rounded skill set, decent striker, good submission grappler, can mix into wrestling as well. So yeah, I know it's short notice. This fight's at a catchweight. I'm going to look into it a little bit more because this was just announced yesterday, but I do like the underdog here in Vanderford. We're going to say the official pick is Vanderford by decision. And next fight up, we have Javid Basharat, a -258 favorite. The comeback on Ricky Simon is +210. And I've just been kind of out on Ricky Simon his last couple fights. He just hasn't looked the same, to be honest. This is a guy that needs to have wrestling success. He averages over 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. But as we've seen, when he's unable to consolidate position and hold his opponents down, which is something that he has struggled with in the past, that's where he tends to struggle. He doesn't really have much of a backup plan because on the feet, he's not a very good striker. We know that he has durability concerns as well. So this is one where I just think Basharat is going to be a step ahead here as the better striker. Clear speed advantage on the feet, going to be mixing in those leg kicks. And we know that Basharat actually has a solid ground game as well. So I'd be, it'd be tough for me to believe that Simon is going to be able to control him on the mat, at least enough to win these rounds. And if that's the case, then I just don't see him getting his hand raised here in a fight that I do expect to hit the judges' scorecard. So we're going to say it's Basharat by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have a clash between 2 UFC newcomers. Both guys fought on this past season of Dana White's Contender Series. We have my guy Mansour Abdul-Malik, a -950 favorite. The comeback on Nick Klein is +575. And if you guys watch my Contender Series breakdown I did, Mansour Abdul-Malik was one of my top prospects on this past season. And the reason being is just because he comes from a very high-level wrestling background. He wrestled Division I. He's an undefeated prospect, hasn't really fought much level of competition yet, but the power cannot be overstated. This guy is extremely athletic, extremely explosive, and he can just ragdoll his opponents to the ground where he has some nasty ground and pound. Now, he is not bulletproof though, because as we've seen, he gets sloppy on the feet at times. He was actually dropped in his professional debut, and we've seen him take some shots, even in that Contender Series fight, and then the gas tank as well. Like, because he is so explosive with those big movements, with how much muscle that he is carrying around, I do have concerns in fights that get extended. But in this type of matchup against Nick Klein, Klein is basically, like, he's not really supposed to be here, right? Like, this guy was a sizable underdog on the Contender Series. He was brought in, as the B side. Nobody really expected much out of him there, and he just ran right through his opponent and got to the back, choked him out. Very impressive win. But honestly, like, his skill set is not UFC level, personally. Like, his striking is very awkward and janky. He can be hurt. He can be clipped on the feet as well. And even though he does have a little bit of a grappling game that he's gone to in some of his fights, he's not going to have the wrestling or grappling advantage against somebody that's way stronger than him, way more powerful, and has that high-level wrestling background. I expect Klein to be taken down here within the first minute, and I struggle to see him be able to fight out of those bad positions. So I'm going to side with my guy Abdul-Malik, and the trends, using the trends tool at fightnumbers.com, we know that one of the most profitable trends over the last 3 years is these squash type of matchups from these Contender Series fighters. Over the past 3 years, Contender Series fighters making their UFC debut that are -400 or higher are 21-2 over the past 3 years. Just under a 7% ROI. So obviously massive chalk. I'm not like advocating for that here, but just saying the trends have supported it to be pretty profitable. To be honest, where it's at now, it's probably out of range to be able to parlay, but just saying this does seem like another squash matchup. I expect Abdul-Malik to win. We'll say it's Abdul-Malik by TKO in round 1. and that's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Mel Costa, -115, slight favorite with Andre Fili on the comeback at -105. And this is a fight matchup that I expect to play out very competitively. We have Andre Fili coming off a split decision win over Cub Swanson, and Fili's a veteran of the fight game at this point. He's got a ton of UFC fights, so it's not really a surprise what we're going to see out of Andre Fili. Very well-rounded game, solid jab, will mix in the leg kicks, can mix in the wrestling at times as well, averages around 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. But we've also seen his limitations, because once he faces guys that are just better strikers than him or better wrestlers than him, he just really doesn't have, like, he's a guy who I think looks really good against guys that he's better than, and against guys that, you know, he's on a similar wavelength or that are better than him, he tends to look really bad. And you can say that for a few fighters, but I think it's really clear in Fili fights. And this is one where I would say Mel Costa's probably on the same level as him. I expect this fight to play out very closely. Costa is somebody that I think is going to be able to compete in the striking. I think the striking plays out very closely here, but I also do think Costa is going to be the better wrestler, and maybe that's a hot take. We'll see how it plays out, but this is somebody that has gone to his wrestling at times as well, and I think he'll be able to have more success if he does that against Andre Fili here. I also trust his durability a little bit more, despite him being finished a couple times on the regional scene. So this is one that I do expect to hit the judges' scorecards. I actually don't hate the GTD in the -180 range currently. I feel like that could be a potential play for me this weekend, but I'm going to slightly side with the Mel Costa side. I think it's a close fight, 29-28, maybe even a potential split, but I do think it goes the distance. We'll say it's Costa by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Aslan taking on Jon Cutelaba. Currently, we have Aslan, a -166 favorite. The comeback on Cutelaba is +140. And guys, I will go to my grave saying that Aslan is not that guy. You're not that guy, pal. We talked about him earlier in the when we mentioned the Cerqueira fight, and to me, that's always going to be Aslan's win condition. The guy does have power. I'm not denying that. All 14 of his wins have come by knockout. Majority of them have come inside the first round. But what you tend to see with these guys, if you've been doing this for a while, is a lot of these front-running guys that have power, that have these knockouts against mostly bums. Once they start to face better level of competition, you see a lot of holes in other areas of their game. Typically, it's the defensive grappling and it's the cardio. And those are two things that we've at least seen glimpses of Aslan where it hasn't been good, right? So at some point, somebody's going to be able to expose that at the UFC level, and I'm not going to miss the fade there. Even though Jon Cutelaba has concerns of his own, he's been knocked out multiple times. He's a front runner as well. We don't fully trust the gas tank. I do think he's just as likely to hurt Aslan early in this fight. I also like the wrestling upside. Cutelaba can land multiple takedowns. He's going to look good early in this fight, and I think he could potentially, show some of those holes that I think Aslan has in terms of the defensive grappling, and then maybe gets tired having to defend the wrestling. So I'm going to side with the underdog here. Cutelaba by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Alonzo Menifield, a -280 favorite. The comeback on UFC newcomer Julius Walker is +180, and I might need somebody to talk me off laying the juice here with Alonzo Menifield. This is somebody that, going into, I think, the Murzakanov fight, his last time out, I said on the Fight Number show, I'm done with this guy. I don't trust him at all. Don't trust the fight IQ. He fights like an idiot a lot of the times. But all those things aside, he's just flat out better than this level of competition in Julius Walker. This guy's very green, hasn't even been fighting professionally for 2 years, has fought mostly bums on the regional scene, does have a win over Bavon Lewis, former UFC fighter. He also has an amateur loss to Tristan Overvig, who has a loss over an LFA to Nick Klein, who's now being set up to get squashed by Mansour Abdul-Malik that we covered earlier on this card. So it all comes full circle in the low level, regional scene in terms of some of these weight classes. So Julius Walker's just not somebody that I have much respect for, at least at this stage in his career. He seems to have, typical light heavyweight power, a bunch of early first round finishes against mostly nobodies. And Alonzo Menifield has all that and then some more. This guy's more powerful. He's a better striker, and he's also very strong. He's very tough in terms of those pummeling sequences against the cage that he tends to get himself to in a lot of his fights. And I don't think that that's like the way that he's going to win this fight. But you see, like, Walker does struggle when guys are just kind of stronger than him up along the fence. And I think that's going to be a clear case here against Alonzo Menifield. Yes, there's gas tank concerns. There's gas tank concerns on both sides. And I also think, despite the fight IQ concerns, Menifield is just better in almost every single area here. So I'm going to side with Alonzo Menifield. I think he gets the knockout. I think it comes early. We'll say it's Menifield by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Jon Silva, a minus 535 favorite. The comeback on Melsic Baghdasaryan is plus 400. And you guys know me, I'm a big Melsic fan. But this one's tough, man. Obviously, Jon Silva is an absolute dog. This guy has big power. He's also kind of dispelled at least a little bit of the cardio concerns. And it's very clear he's one of the most powerful guys in this division. So he's capable of knocking anybody out. But at the same time, Melsic Baghdasaryan is a very good striker. Mix in the leg kicks, got really sharp leg kicks, nasty elbows as well. This guy's a good striker in his own right. He's struggled with his defensive grappling, and he does slow down in extended fights. So this is kind of like, these guys are pretty similar. I think the hype is clearly on the Jon Silva side, and for good reason. But I think the line is getting a little bit crazy here. I don't hate people for taking the dog shot here. It's going to be one where I think Melsic is more competitive than the odds suggest, but I am going to side with Jon Silva. We'll say it's Silva by TKO. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have John Matsumoto, a minus 162 favorite. The comeback on Rob Font is plus 136. And Matsumoto was originally booked to fight Chris Gutierrez here in a couple weeks. So he's not entirely short notice, but he is stepping in on short notice to replace Dominic Cruz, who pulled out of this fight due to injury and since retired from the UFC. He's facing Rob Font here, and I do think Matsumoto's going to have multiple advantages. Matsumoto's a guy that's a very good striker, very well-rounded as well, can mix in the wrestling, and he's got good submissions in his game as well. The one knock on him is that he can be taken down and out-grappled by better grapplers, but that won't be the case here against Rob Font. This is a guy in Rob Font who's a good striker, veteran of the division, strong jab, came through against Kyler Phillips as an underdog his last time out, but it's very clear that his best days are behind him. This is somebody that was known as being one of the most durable guys in the division. That has since been a little come into question, you know, in these most couple recent fights where the durability isn't as strong as it used to be, which happens when you age and when you've taken so much damage over the course of your career. But my biggest concern with Font is that he's never been able to defend takedowns. This guy cannot defend a takedown whatsoever. He's okay at working back to his feet and, you know, avoiding getting submitted, but he's gonna give up those takedowns. So this is one that I expect the fight to play out competitively on the feet, but I like the volume of Matsumoto. He's got a high motor as well, and he could keep up that pace for 15 minutes. But if he goes to the wrestling here, like I expect, I do think he covers this number. I'm going to side with Matsumoto. Matsumoto by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our co-main event, as Anthony Hernandez is a minus 298 favorite. The comeback on Brendan Allen is plus 240. And this is a really fun matchup between two guys that are both primarily grapplers that I like honestly quite a bit on both sides. I'm fans of these guys. They actually fought for the LFA title back in the day. This was years ago, and Anthony Hernandez did win a 5-round decision. And I actually like this fight being only 3 rounds. I like it to go to decision as well, because both of these guys are well versed in the grappling. I expect to see a lot of really fun grappling exchanges, but I also don't really envision either guy finishing the other. And I think this is a case where Brendan Allen is probably going to be more competitive than these odds suggest, but I do slightly favor Hernandez. It's just the relentless style that he has. I expect him to have more success in some of these grappling exchanges, so it's one that I do think is close, and I'm potentially going to be on the Allen side, but I do think this one does play out competitively. I do think GTD is the best play here, but in terms of the official pick, it's going to be Hernandez by decision. Which brings us to our main event, as Song Yadong is a minus 278 favorite. The comeback on Henry Cejudo is plus 225, and this is one where I do think Song Yadong wins here. He's a solid 5-round fighter. He's pretty proven at this stage in his career. He's got underrated power, in my opinion. Very fast, very good with his footwork. Sure, he can give up takedowns, especially to somebody that caliber of a wrestler like Henry Cejudo, who comes from an Olympic-level wrestling background, averages around 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. I do think Henry is going to be able to land a couple takedowns here. I just question whether or not he's going to be able to do much with those takedowns because he struggled at times to control his opponents, and we know that Song Yadong is good at working back to his feet, and I think while it's on the feet, Song Yadong's going to be landing more volume and landing the bigger shots as well, especially over the course of 25 minutes. So I'm going to side with the favorite here. We'll say it's Song Yadong by decision. That's the official pick. And as always, guys, FightNumbers.com has everything you need if you're betting on fights this weekend. I appreciate you watching. Best of luck, and we will see you next time.